The old grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, each resonant dong a hammer blow against the silence of my empty house. I sat at my large oak desk, the faint scent of lemon polish and old paper a familiar comfort in the sterile quiet. Rain lashed against the window panes, mirroring the storm that had been raging inside me for the past 6 months. On the desk, under the warm glow of a banker's lamp, lay a single sheet of paper. It was a letter, but not one of condolence or sympathy. It was a declaration of war. My name is Elias Vance, and until 6 months ago I was what you might call a success. I'd built a multi-million-dollar software company from the ground up, fueled by caffeine, code, and a relentless ambition that had been my hallmark since childhood. I wasn't just the CEO. I was the architect of a dream I had shared with my younger brother, Matteo. Matteo was the charismatic one, the face of the company. He had a smile that could disarm armies, and a way with words that could sell sand in the Sahara. I was the engine, the quiet, focused mind that wrote the algorithms and built the frameworks. We were a perfect team, or so I thought. We were more than brothers. We were partners, confidants, and the two halves of a single whole. The letter on my desk was from him. It was a settlement offer, a ridiculously small sum of money in exchange for my silence and my complete abdication from the company I had created. It was the final nail in a coffin of betrayal that had been 6 months in the making. It all started on a Tuesday. I remember the date, April 14th, because it was the day I was supposed to close on a new house, a sprawling estate with a view of the ocean that I had bought for my fiancée, Clara. I was on my way to the signing, my heart light with the promise of a future I had worked so hard to build, when my phone rang. It was Matteo. "Elias," he said, his voice strained. "You need to come to the office. Now." There was an edge to his tone that I had never heard before, a brittle quality that sent a shiver of unease down my spine. "What's wrong? I'm on my way to the signing." "Forget the signing," he snapped. "Just get here. It's an emergency." I turned the car around, my mind racing through 100 different scenarios. A server crash? A security breach? A hostile takeover bid? Nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I walked into the boardroom. The entire executive team was there, their faces a mixture of pity and apprehension. Matteo stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed over his chest, his handsome face set in a grim mask. Clara was there too, sitting next to him, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Matteo took a deep breath. "Elias," he said, his voice cold and formal. "We've had a board meeting. We've all agreed that it's in the best interest of the company for you to take a leave of absence." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "A leave of absence? What are you talking about? We're about to launch our biggest product yet." "That's just it, Elias," Clara said, her voice soft and persuasive. "You've been working too hard. You're stressed. You're not thinking clearly. We're all worried about you." I looked around the room, at the faces of the people I had hired, mentored, and trusted. They wouldn't meet my eyes. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, a sense of surreal detachment from reality. This had to be some kind of twisted joke. "Don't understand," I said, turning back to Matteo. "You can't do this. I'm the CEO. I own 51% of this company." Matteo's lips twisted into a smirk, a cruel, unfamiliar expression that made my blood run cold. "Not anymore, brother." He slid a stack of documents across the table. I picked them up, my hands trembling. They were share transfer agreements, signed and dated, transferring my controlling interest in the company to Matteo. My signature was on every single one of them. But I had never signed these papers. The room started to spin, the faces of my colleagues blurring into a kaleidoscope of betrayal. I looked at Clara, my fiancée, the woman I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. She just stared back at me, her eyes filled with a cold, hard resolve that I had never seen before. That was 6 months ago. In the days that followed, I was locked out of my office, my emails, and my life. The launch of our new product, my magnum opus, went ahead without me. It was a massive success, and Matteo, my own flesh and blood, was hailed as a genius, a visionary, the new king of the tech world. I was left with nothing. My company, my reputation, my fiancé, all gone. The house I was supposed to buy was sold to someone else. My bank accounts were frozen, my assets tied up in a legal battle that I couldn't afford to fight. I was a ghost in my own life, a silent, unseen casualty of my own success. But the one thing they couldn't take from me was my mind. And in the 6 months of forced exile, my mind had been busy. I had been planning, strategizing, and preparing. I had been a creator, a builder, an innovator. Now, I was going to be a destroyer. I picked up the letter from my desk, the settlement offer, the pittance they had offered me for my silence. I lit a match and held the letter to the flame, watching as the words turned to ash. The storm outside raged on, but it was nothing compared to the storm that was about to break. They had started a war. I was going to end it. Fire consumes, but it also purifies. As I watched the last of Matteo's insulting offer turn to black, fluttering ash, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. They thought they had broken me, that they had taken everything. They were wrong. They had taken the peripherals, the money, the title, the public acclaim. But they had left me with my greatest asset, the intricate, analytical mind that had built the empire they now occupied. An empire built on a foundation I knew intimately, down to the last line of code. My first move wasn't an attack. It was reconnaissance. For the next few days, I lived like a hermit, subsisting on black coffee and the burning fuel of my anger. I turned my small home office into a command center. I bought a new laptop with cash, a burner phone, and routed my internet connection through a series of encrypted proxies that would make my location virtually untraceable. They had locked me out of the front door of my own company, but they had forgotten about the secret passages I had built into the architecture. Years ago, during the initial development of our proprietary network security protocol, I had embedded a personal encrypted backdoor. It was a failsafe, a God key, that would allow me to access the entire system undetected, bypassing all security layers. It was a contingency for a catastrophic system failure, not a corporate mutiny orchestrated by my own brother, but its purpose was about to be elegantly repurposed. My fingers flew across the keyboard, the muscle memory of a decade of coding taking over. The firewalls and security measures Matteo had likely paid a fortune to upgrade were formidable, but they were like brick walls against a ghost. I slipped through them silently. Once inside, I was a phantom in the machine. I could see everything: emails, internal memos, financial records, server logs. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming, but my mind was a fine-toothed comb, sifting through the digital noise for the signal of their conspiracy. I found the first thread in the company's financial records, a series of large, unaccounted-for payments made to a shell corporation I'd never heard of, Orion Strategic Solutions. The payment started about a year ago, long before the takeover. They were authorized by Mateo and countersigned by our CFO, a man named Marcus Thorne, whom I had always considered a loyal friend. The description for the payments was vague. Consulting fees. But millions of dollars in consulting fees to an unknown entity. That wasn't a red flag. It was a screaming siren. Digging deeper, I found emails between Mateo and Clara. Reading them felt like swallowing broken glass. They were intimate, filled with shared dreams of a future without me. They talked about our company and the dead weight they needed to shed. That dead weight was me. In one email, Mateo wrote, "It's almost done. The Orion package is arriving next week. Once we have it, Elias won't know what hit him. He'll be out, and we'll be free." The Orion package. It had to be connected to the forged documents, but I needed more than digital breadcrumbs. Or needed a legal mind, someone who could help me turn this evidence into a weapon. My own high-priced corporate lawyers had dropped me the second my accounts were frozen. I needed someone different, someone hungry, brilliant, and with a grudge against the kind of establishment figures Mateo had become. I thought of only one person, Julian Croft. Julian and I had been rivals in college. He was a law student with a mind as sharp as a scalpel, and a disdain for authority that constantly got him into trouble. While I was building my company, he was making a name for himself as a defense attorney who took on impossible cases, often against massive corporations. He was a shark, but he was a shark who fought for the underdog. I'd heard he'd had his license suspended a year ago over a controversial case where he'd exposed a corrupt judge, an act that had made him a pariah in the legal community. He was the perfect ally. I found him running a small, dusty bookshop in a forgotten part of the city. He looked older, his face etched with a cynicism that hadn't been there in college. But his eyes still held the same fiery intelligence. "Elias Vance," he said without looking up from a first-edition copy of Moby Dick. "To what do I owe the displeasure?" I laid it all out for him. The betrayal, the forged documents, the shell corporation. I showed him the emails on my encrypted laptop. He listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he closed the book and looked at me, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. So the golden boy of the tech world got his wings clipped by his own brother and his pretty little fiancée. He mused. "It's almost poetic. Can you help me?" I asked, cutting through his sarcasm. "Help you?" "Elias, this isn't just a case. This is a masterpiece of corporate malfeasance. It's beautiful in its sheer audacity." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "They didn't just steal your company. They stole your life. A simple lawsuit won't be enough. You don't want compensation. You want annihilation." I nodded slowly. "Annihilation." "Good." Julian grinned. "Because I don't do simple lawsuits. We're not going to sue them. We're going to dismantle them, brick by brick. But first, we need to know who this Orion is, and we need to find the original. Documents with your real signature that they used to create the forgeries." That night, back in my command center, I focused my search on Orion Strategic Solutions. It was a ghost company, a digital smokescreen with no physical address and no public records. But they had made one mistake. One of the payments was made via a wire transfer that was routed through a small, regional bank. In the transaction details, I found a reference number and a name I didn't recognize. Annalise Schmidt, listed as the account manager. It was a long shot, but it was a new thread, a human connection in a chain of digital deception. As the first rays of dawn broke through my window, I booked a flight. Annalise Schmidt worked at a bank branch 3 states away. It was time to leave the shadows and hunt in the real world. The flight was 3 hours of caffeine and cold focus. Landing in the sprawling anonymous city felt like stepping onto a different planet, a world away from the glass towers and manicured lawns of my previous life. This was a place of brick and concrete, of people who kept their heads down and minded their own business. It was the perfect place to hunt a ghost. The bank was a small, unassuming building, wedged between a pawn shop and a laundromat. It was the last place you'd expect to be a conduit for millions of dollars in corporate espionage funds. I sat in a rental car across the street for hours, watching. Annalise Schmidt left for her lunch break at exactly 12:30 p.m. She was in her late 40s with a tired face and clothes that were neat but inexpensive. She didn't look like a criminal mastermind. She looked like someone caught in a trap. I followed her to a small diner a few blocks away. She sat alone in a booth, nursing a cup of coffee and staring out the window. I slid into the seat opposite her. She looked up, startled, her eyes wide with a fear that told me I was in the right place. "Annalise Schmidt?" I asked quietly. She just nodded, her hand trembling slightly as she set her coffee cup down. "My name is Elias Vance," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "We haven't met, but you've been managing a significant amount of my money. It was moved into an account held by a company called Orion Strategic Solutions." The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. "Please don't lie to me, Annalise," I said, my voice soft but laced with steel. "I'm not here to get you into trouble. In fact, I'm here to get you out of it. The people you're working for, my brother Matteo Vance and his partner Clara, they are going to prison for a very long time. When they go down, they will drag everyone down with them, including the regional bank manager who helped them launder millions of dollars and facilitate the theft of $1 billion company." I let the words hang in the air. I could see the frantic calculations happening behind her eyes. She was weighing her loyalty to them against her own survival. "They told me it was a standard corporate acquisition," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Discreet, off the books. They said it was all legal." "Did forging my signature seem legal to you?" I countered. "Did creating a ghost company to funnel payments to seem legal?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I have a son in college, medical bills. They offered me more money than I've ever seen in my life. They said no one would ever know." "I know," I said simply. "And soon, everyone will. Unless you help me. I don't care about your cut, Annalise. I don't care about the money. I want the people who did this to me. I want Orion. Tell me who they are." She finally broke. The story came tumbling out, in a hushed, desperate torrent. Orion Strategic Solutions wasn't just a shell corporation. It was a boutique firm for the morally bankrupt elite. They specialized in the impossible, creating flawless, deep-faked video evidence, fabricating digital paper trails, and their signature service, perfect biometric and handwritten forgeries, using a proprietary AI that analyzed thousands of samples to replicate a person's signature with 100% accuracy. They provided the tools for the perfect crime. Matteo hadn't just found a forger. He'd hired a company that weaponized identity. "They have a server," she said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "A private, encrypted server where they keep everything. It's their insurance policy. They keep a complete record of every job, every client, every illegal transaction. The man who runs it, he's paranoid. He trusts no one." "Where is this server?" I asked, my heart pounding. This was the jackpot. I don't know, she admitted. But I know how they communicate. They use a secure messaging app, custom-built. The man in charge. They call him Daedalus. I have his contact code. That's all I have, I swear. She fumbled with her phone and showed me the code. I took a picture of it. It was more than enough. One more thing, I said, leaning in. My brother is smart, but he's arrogant. He would want a trophy, proof of his victory. The original documents he used to create the forgeries, the ones with my real signature that he got me to sign under false pretenses. Where are they? Her eyes flickered with recognition. His office, at the company. He had a safe installed behind a painting, a landscape of the Amalfi Coast. He said it was for his most valuable assets. I slid a burner phone across the table. Thank you, Annalise. You've done the right thing. In a few days, you're going to get an anonymous transfer to an offshore account, enough to pay off your debts and move somewhere new. When this is all over, your name will not be on any of the documents I provide to the authorities. Disappear. Annalise. Forget you ever saw me? I left her sitting in the diner, a ghost at her own table. As I walked out into the harsh afternoon light, my phone vibrated. It was an alert from a monitoring program I had placed on Matteo's corporate email. He had just sent a one-word message to Clara. Problem. They were getting nervous. They could feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. They had no idea it was me, moving the earth. I now had 2 targets, a physical safe hidden in the heart of my old empire, and a digital fortress run by a man named Daedalus. Getting to them would be nearly impossible, but nearly was a word I was beginning to enjoy. The hunt had just escalated. The flight back was a blur of frantic energy. I wasn't just a man with a plan anymore. I was a general, preparing for a 2-front war. One front was physical, a state-of-the-art safe, buried deep in enemy territory. The other was digital, an encrypted server shielded by a master of deception, known only as Daedalus. Attacking either one was a monumental risk. I was going to attack both. At the same time, I met Julian back at his bookshop. The smell of aging, paper a strange counterpoint to the high-tech conspiracy we were unraveling. I laid out the 2 targets. A physical safe and a ghost server, Julian said, leaning back in his creaky leather chair. He steepled his fingers, a glint in his eye. You don't believe in half measures, do you, Vance? They left me with nothing, I replied. I plan to return the favor, but I can't get into that safe. I'm a programmer, not a cat burglar. The security systems in that building are my own design. The motion sensors, the pressure plates, the biometric locks on the executive floor. I know their every strength and weakness, but I can't bypass them myself without being on site. Julian nodded, already scrolling through a contact list on a heavily encrypted phone. I know a guy. Or rather, a woman. She's not cheap, but she's the best. Calls herself Silas. More of an artist than a thief. She specializes in impossible extractions. She'll get you your documents. While Julian made the call, I turned my attention to Daedalus. Brute force was useless against a mind like his. I had to use bait. I needed to become a client. Using a new, completely anonymized identity, I reached out through the secure messaging app, using the code Annalise had given me. My message was simple. I require a service of the highest discretion. A problem of succession. My reputation is on the line. I was told Daedalus is the only one who can craft a solution. The reply came 12 hours later. A single cryptic question. Are you a king or a pawn? I knew this was a test. A psychological probe. I am the man who is building a new board, I replied. and I need to remove the old one. This began a tense, week-long digital dance. Daedalus was cautious, communicating in riddles and hypotheticals. He was feeling me out, testing my resources, my motives, my nerve. I constructed a persona for him, a ruthless European aristocrat looking to disinherit his older brother from a centuries-old family fortune. I fed him a carefully crafted narrative, complete with fabricated documents and fake online histories that I built myself, all designed to appeal to his sense of intellectual superiority and his greed. The hook I designed was a video. I told Daedalus I needed a flawless deepfake of my brother renouncing his claim to the family estate. To prove the legitimacy of my request, I needed to send him the source material, a collection of high-resolution videos and audio files. But this collection was my Trojan horse. Embedded within the metadata of one of the video files was a dormant worm I had coded from scratch. It was my digital masterpiece, a silent, invisible seeker designed to do one thing. Once inside his network, it would awaken, map his entire system architecture, find the physical location of his server, and transmit the coordinates back to me before self-destructing without a trace. Meanwhile, we met with Silas. She was a small, wiry woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She moved with a quiet, fluid grace that was unnerving. We gathered in the back of Julian's bookshop around a table covered with blueprints of my old office building. "Your brother has upgraded security since you left," she said, her voice a low murmur. She pointed to a section on the blueprint. New laser grid in the elevator shaft. Subdermal scanner for the executive suite. Amateur hour. But the safe, that's a Kreller-Dornan 7. Biometric, seismic sensors, and a secondary thermal lock. Nasty. I explained the flaws in my own security design, the blind spots in the camera coverage, the 3-minute reset delay in the pressure plates after a system reboot, which I could trigger remotely, the specific frequency the biometric scanner was sensitive to, which could be temporarily jammed. "You get me to his office door," Silas said, her eyes fixed on me. "I'll get you the safe. I'll need a 90-second window, no more." The plan was set. Silas would go in during a company-wide gala. Matteo was hosting next Friday, the 1-year anniversary of the product launch that had made him famous. The building would be mostly empty, with a skeleton security crew focused on the event downstairs. I would be the eye in the sky, quarterbacking the operation from my command center, manipulating the building's systems in real time. My digital dance with Daedalus reached its climax. After a week of careful seduction, he finally agreed to review my source material. "Send the files," his message read. "Use the encrypted transfer link I am providing. My system will analyze them for authenticity." My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The link was the door. My Trojan horse was ready to ride. "The file is sent," I typed, my finger hovering over the enter key. I looked at Julian, who gave me a grim nod. Across the city, Silas was making her final preparations. I hit send. The message on my screen read, "Transfer complete. Analyzing." The bait was taken. The clock was ticking. Both fronts of the war were about to explode. The night of the gala was electric. From my command center, a dark room lit only by the glow of 6 monitors, I had a god's eye view of the board. One screen showed a live feed of the party. Matteo, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, raising a champagne flute to a crowd of adoring investors. Clara was on his arm, a glittering snake in a couture gown. They were the king and queen of a stolen castle, oblivious to the siege that was already underway. The other monitors displayed the building's security schematics, my worm's progress, and a secure comms link to Silas, who was a silent, shadowy figure on a rooftop across the street, Phase 1 begins. Now, I whispered into my headset. My fingers danced across a keyboard, and 3 blocks away, a transformer on a utility pole sparked and died, plunging the entire district into a momentary blackout. The building's emergency generators kicked in, but it was the reboot I needed. Pressure plates are offline for the next 3 minutes. I told Silas. Go. I watched a tiny heat signature detach from the rooftop and rappel down the side of the building, a spider descending on a thread of silk. She moved with an eerie, inhuman grace. As she worked on a window on the 48th floor, an alert flashed on my screen. Daedalus. Your files are intriguing, his message read. The quality is exceptional. However, my system detected a metadata anomaly. A ghost. Signature in the codec. Explain. My blood went cold. He'd found it. Or a piece of it. I had to stall. It's a digital watermark. I typed back, my mind racing. A proprietary security measure from my family's archivist to prevent leaks. I can have it removed if it's an issue, but it will take time. Silas was inside. I'm in the vent system. Her voice crackled, barely audible. Heading for the executive corridor. On another screen, a progress bar showed my worm was at 40% mapping. It was a race. Daedalus's suspicion versus my program's speed. An interesting precaution, Daedalus replied. Run a diagnostic on the file. Send me the report. He was toying with me, setting a trap of his own. Running a standard diagnostic would reveal the worm. I had to send him a report, but it had to be one I created. I spent the next 60 seconds, an eternity, fabricating a convincing diagnostic log that showed nothing but clean code. Laser grid in the corridor is hot, Silas reported. Your jammer? Engaging, I said, activating a frequency disruptor. The thin red lines on my schematic vanished. You have 45 seconds. Just as I sent the fake report to Daedalus, my worm sent me a notification. Mapping complete. Locating physical server. Stand by. The final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Silas was at Mateo's office door. Bypassing the lock now. The tension was suffocating. My digital war and our physical one were converging on this single moment. Another message from Daedalus. Report is clean. You are either very careful or very clever. We will proceed. I had bought myself more time. At that exact second, 2 things happened at once. Silas whispered. I'm in. Moving to the painting. And my screen flashed with a new data packet from my worm. A string of GPS coordinates. A remote data farm in Iceland. I had him. Silas. Status! I barked. Working on the Krella Dornan. It's even nastier up close. Start the clock. 90 seconds. Starting now. I watched the timer on my screen begin its relentless countdown. Outside, the partygoers laughed and drank, their voices a faint murmur. They were celebrating on top of a ticking bomb. Seconds. My worm began its final sequence, transmitting the complete data package. A copy of every file on Daedalus's server. Terabytes of damning evidence against 100 powerful people. Seconds. Seismic sensors are fighting me, Silas hissed. Almost there. For 5 seconds. The data transfer was nearing completion. A new message from Daedalus appeared. Mr. Vance. An amusing charade. He knew. Seconds. My screen flashed. Worm detected. Purge protocol initiated. Silas, get out now, I yelled. Seconds! Not yet! A loud click echoed through my headset. Safe is open. I have the documents. And something else? A ledger. Looks personal. Seconds! Go! Forget the ledger. Just go. The data transfer completed. My worm self-destructed, leaving nothing behind but a ghost. On my screen, the comms link with Daedalus went dead. He was gone. I'm out, Silas said, her breath heavy. Document secured. I leaned back in my chair, drenched in sweat, my body trembling with adrenaline. We had done it. We had won. The end came not with a bang, but with a quiet, surgical precision. The next Friday, as Matteo stood on a stage before the world's press to announce a global expansion, the first news alert hit. Tech CEO Matteo Vance, accused of billion-dollar fraud in Bombshell. Report. I had given everything to the most ruthless financial journalist in the country. Simultaneously, an anonymous tip to Interpol, complete with the GPS coordinates and a sample of the data, triggered a raid on a server farm in Iceland. I watched it all on a live feed. I saw the confusion on Matteo's face, the way Clara clutched his arm, her mask of perfection cracking. I saw their phones light up with a firestorm of notifications. I saw their world, built on lies, and my life's work, burned to the ground in the space of 5 minutes. The final shot was of 2 grim-faced FBI agents approaching the stage. 3 months later, Julian found me on the balcony of a small house overlooking the Pacific. I'd used a fraction of the court-ordered settlement to buy it. They both took plea deals, he said, handing me a glass of whiskey. 15 years for Matteo, 10 for Clara. Daedalus is still missing, but his client list is keeping the Justice Department busy for the next decade. He told me Silas had sent her regards from a beach in Bali. Annalise Schmidt had quietly resigned from her job and moved to Oregon with her son. They were all ghosts now, scattered by the storm I had unleashed. I looked out at the endless blue of the ocean, the water calm and steady. The fire of revenge had cooled, leaving not emptiness but a quiet, clean slate. They had taken my company, my name, my past. But in the end they had given me something far more valuable. My future. And, for the first time in a long time, it was mine to write.